In 2024, there was a Chinese movie made in the Netherlands called Happy Palace. Its premise is almost the same as Fagara, which is a Hong Kong movie that came out a few years prior in 2019. The main plot of both are, due to the death of the father, the children has to come back and take over the restaurant so that they could pay off the father's debt. Let's see which film did it better. Warning, spoilers ahead. The main protagonist in both films is a daughter who works at a call center. In Happy Palace, it's Yungling played by Donna Tang, and in Fagara we have Acacia played by Sammy Chang. I can relate more with Acacia, especially the struggles and working hard, and has a much more noticeable change throughout the film. At the start, she numbs herself from her emotions, like a mala hot pot, which is a numbing hot pot, but at the end she openly expresses it. While Yongling doesn't have a character development, as her character is a bit all over the place to really see any change. Yongling's inner struggles are also not really visualized enough to really acknowledge them, but also the same can be said for her resolve. As when Yongling said she misses her father, it's said in such an emotionless way, it doesn't feel like that she means it. Let's compare the scene where they both get the call about their father. Yongling gets to work and her colleagues are celebrating her birthday on the wrong date, and gets a call from her mother Sukwai, who asks why people are celebrating her birthday and tells her to come back to the restaurant to help out as her father has died. Acacia is working at the desk but is getting quite a lot of spam calls. However, the last call tells her something happened to her dad, which sounds like a scam call, and she brushes it off as one, till the other end tells her to rush to a hospital. Then she knew it wasn't a scam. Fagara did it better, as the whole scene is much more relatable. People all over the world know about spam and scam phone calls. But also the call about her father is much more straightforward and straight to the point realistically. While at Happy Palace, the mom tells Yongling about her father's death at the end of the conversation, like as if the death isn't as big of a deal, and coming back to help as the restaurant is much more important. Happy Palace also neglects the Chinese culture of seeing family members one last time before dying, which is a very important thing in our culture, which Fagara did a much better job with. It would have made much more sense if Sukwai directly said something happened to her father, then cut to the burial, so we could presume that a lot of things had happened between the phone call and the burial instead of saying he had passed away directly. Both films have a birthday date element, so let's compare those two. In Fagara, Acacia is asked to check the details of her father, and a nurse asks her his date of birth. However, she only knows his birthday and not the year, which honestly is a common thing and also quite relatable, but it also foreshadows that she does not know a lot of her father's past. While Happy Palace is a much more forced mistake, as they are working in a modern company and the boss and the colleagues should easily check the database what her actual birthday is. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and it's not a relatable problem. It doesn't have a deeper meaning other than people working at that office are idiots. After both fathers' death, we of course get a funeral. However, somehow Happy Palace chose to do a burial instead of a funeral. But it is an odd mix of Chinese and Western burial rituals, with speeches given by friends and also things getting burned. And Yongling is wearing black and gives a whole speech in front of the grave. And then the brother Lokman stumbles in late to the funeral and hugs his mother Sukwai and cries. In Fagara, we get an actual Cantonese Taoist funeral, which is held in a funeral parlor. We see Acacia also dressed accordingly in the white funeral clothing. We see her first estranged sister Branch, who does the bowing ritual. After, we see a Taoist ritual of breaking Hell's Gate, where the second estranged sister Cherry arrives fashionably late. Another point to Fagara, who understands the culture, while Happy Palace didn't even spend 10 seconds to Google Chinese burial rituals, as Chinese burials should be only attended by close family wearing all white without any jewelry. Also, families should not say anything during the whole ceremony, preventing calling back the spirit of the dead. If the story didn't include Seok-wai, it would have made much more sense as the second generation would mess up all the rituals without knowing better, or just made it a Christian Chinese family and have a normal Western burial. Happy Palace is quite a medium-sized Chinese-Indonesian restaurant which somehow ran by a staff of three, the mom, the dad, and Jungling before, and after the death of the father, it's Jungling and Seok-wai in the kitchen and Lokman doing the waitering. While at Fagara, we have a small hotpot restaurant in Tai Hang area of Causeway Bay in Hong Kong. It is run by a staff of four, an old lady doing the dishes, one guy doing the kitchen, and two persons waitering. But later with two additional sisters becoming four people waitering. The points goes to Fagara as there is much more realistic amount of staff running around. Happy Palace is just understaffed for the size of restaurant it is. They should need at least 3 people in the kitchen and 2 people waitering. Especially when the restaurant is running well in the film, it should have been much more realistically staffed. Both films have money problems they need to solve. With The Happy Palace, the father accumulated a debt of €75,000 from Aunt Ming, who also happens to be a Triad member. The death is also the fault of the father sponsoring his son, Lokman, with €1,000 monthly for a decade so Lokman could chase his dreams of becoming an artist. While for Gara, the hotpot restaurant still had a lease on renting the location, and paying off the lease would leave them in a big debt. They had an option of selling the restaurant with the name of the restaurant, which could have been a simple solution to avoid needing to pay the lease. However, Acacia decided to keep the restaurant open till the end of the lease so the staff could still work. The point goes to Fagara as it's all quite a realistic conflict that could happen in such a situation. While Happy Palace I can't really relate to, especially the inclusion of Chinese mafia, as they were more a thing of the 80s and 90s, but in the last few decades they pretty much disappeared from the Netherlands. I feel it's a negative racial stereotype to be included in any Dutch film. Also, the Happy Palace restaurant, if you actually checked out different kind of restaurants sold in the Netherlands, it could have been easily sold for €200,000 and paid off the debt instantly. Of course, the points goes to Fagara again, which includes food elements very well. The doctor even talks about how spices is a feeling of pain to cover another pain. Then a few scenes after, Cherry had a toothache and then they gave her the Fagara spice which helped her to cover the pain. Then after they use up all the hot pot soup base, they then had to go on a journey to rediscover the father's recipe and also find that one secret ingredient that gave it a distinct flavor of her father's soup base. There is food in Happy Palace because it's a restaurant, but there isn't anything special or meaningful behind them. At home, Jungling makes a really dry looking jjajangmyeon, which is a fried sauce noodle, which somehow makes her realize she wants to cook. Next scene, she talks about revamping the menu, but the new dishes she's saying is basically very basic dishes you can find in any Chinese Indonesian restaurants in the Netherlands. Honestly, they aren't even the most appetizing looking dishes, especially the fish and the white chicken. There are way more hyped up new dishes from China and Hong Kong, especially if you took just a second to search for them on Instagram. In Happy Palace, there's nothing I could relate from the father, and also there's nothing likable about him. But also we don't really see him enough to really care about him, especially after the nightmare shot of him force-feeding Jungling. And he basically tried to poison Aunt Ming to get rid of his death instead of finding other solutions. In Fagara, we get a really nice and caring father, while the only bad thing he did was having kids with multiple ladies. But during the film we discover with Acacia how he was a very caring person, who cared about his staff but also cared about all his daughters even though they were far away, we see him working hard but still doing the little things to connect to his daughters, like watching branch snooker tournaments on TV and chatting with Cherry. The only daughter he didn't have a good connection with was Acacia, who disliked him and ignored him for the wrong reasons. There's also a lot more emotional moments in Fagara, and even him simply saying sorry he couldn't be there for Acacia on a recorder already got the audience tearing up. Somehow both films end at a festivity, Happy Palace at Chinese New Year and Fagara at Mid-Autumn Festival. During the Fire Dragon dance, Acacia gets reminded of a regretful moment in her past where she ignored her father at the Mid-Autumn Festival instead of spending it with him. She then shouted that she forgave him and misses him, and then reunites with her sisters and starts crying. While in Happy Palace, there is a Chinese New Year scene where they celebrate it with the customers, but most of the Chinese restaurants in the Netherlands don't open till midnight, and most of it closes at 9 or 10 p.m. However, after the fireworks, the mother sees the ghost of her husband showing up and waves goodbye. Then Sukwai says he finally can go away peacefully. However, this is a weird mystical Orientalism, as the father was not a restless ghost in the rest of the movie. Also, we get a really cop-out ending, as the mother just torched down the restaurant and does an insurance fraud claim of 70,000 euro, which honestly isn't even that much. Fagara is about being together. Well said in the last scene with Andy Lau, it's not about wanting or being able to be together, as you're missing the bigger picture of together. As Acacia missed out moments where she could have been together with her dad, eating or celebrating New Year, it's about cherishing the moments that you are together with your family or loved ones. While Happy Palace isn't about working hard to accomplish something, it's about if you can't pay your debt, it's okay to just murder the person who lended you the money and burn down your house and restaurant to claim insurance fraud. The better movie is Fagara, as it not only understands Chinese culture but also did proper research on all subjects, giving a lot more deeper meaning to them, and the comedic and the sad moments are just much more stronger. Happy Palace fails as a dark comedy, as it's hard to find anything that resembles dark comedy in this film. Even the jokes at Fagara are more noticeable. But because they filmed it as a dark comedy, it also does not take itself seriously enough. And it causes that this film has an identity crisis. And because of the lack of understanding the Chinese culture and the lack of proper research of the topics, the film is just a soulless attempt in writing an alternate version of Fagara. Thank you all for watching, and if you'd like to see more comparison videos like this, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.